So, I finally played Deltarune chapters 3 and 4, and now my brain will not let me enjoy my life until I make a video on this game in some way. Kinda wish it screamed at me from the start, so I would remember to record the video footage in advance, but sure, whatever, this is my life now. With how popular this game is, not to mention Toby Fox's previous title Undertale, there is a metric ton of videos dissecting every aspect of it and speculating about the future chapters, as Deltarune is full of obfuscation, foreshadowing and mystery. And I need you to know that this video is not that, as I have no interest in repeating what the entire fandom has been saying during the months that happened between the latest chapters releasing and me arriving to this party late. If this is the first video from this channel that you encountered, hi, I'm Tidu, I have a degree in unemployment, also known as philosophy, and these videos are my way of clearing my thoughts on a topic by forcing myself into a structure where I need to address them one at a time, rather than feeling like there is a cartoon dust cloud fight happening inside my skull. So please expect a mess that will roughly take a shape over the duration of this video, and the shape we're aiming for today is that of a heart. Or, as some would say, that of a human soul. Let's start with a primer, under the assumption that the words I just said made absolutely no sense to you. Undertale, developed by Toby Fox with art by Temi Chang, was released in 2015 to a massive success, both critically and commercially. The sales pitch you are most likely to hear is that the game is an RPG where you can beat the entire story by talking to the monsters rather than fighting them, and you dodge attacks by engaging in bullet hell-esque minigames. But this barely scratches the surface of why the game is the phenomenon it is. Undertale is a video game developed by someone who loves video games as an art form. And I don't mean that, oh, Toby played a lot of games and it shows. If the concept of video games was a person, Undertale is a poem that sings praises for every fiber of their muscles and every stray hair on their body. In this one game maker title that takes like 7 hours to reach the credits, there are 50-something enemies, each with their own unique interactions and attack patterns, to tell you a little story about this fun little creature, several of which are boss fights, with each of them being a unique puzzle to solve. A frankly staggering amount of branching dialogues and word states, depending not just on what options you choose, but also who survives encountering you. A completely different story if you left nobody alive. Secrets that can be encountered randomly by only a few lucky players, unless you mess with the game files. Secrets you would never discover unless you mess with the game files. Fights that diegetically interact with the UI, and probably a bunch of stuff I forgot about in the decade that has passed since I played it. Oh yeah, and some absolutely banging music, and some of the funniest goddamn writing I've encountered in any work of fiction. The word deconstruction has been overused and mistaken for being synonymous with contempt for the medium for a long time now. But there is no better word to describe Undertale. It's the video game equivalent of your friend taking a watch apart and saying, "Look, this is the spring that is used to store the energy for the mechanism. Isn't that so fucking cool?" But rather than any of these elements, or the sum of them, the game's most lasting legacy and core reason why it could not exist as a story in any other medium is its exploration of something typically unexplored in video games: the disparity of power between the art piece and the audience. Or, in less pretentious terms, the game is deeply aware that, no matter how seemingly charming, full of life and reactive to your actions it is ultimately a static object and you are a living human being actually capable of change. When you start the game, you may believe that your avatar in this world is this frisky little fella, gender neutral. But over the course of the game it becomes obvious that what you are, in fact, is this little heart icon. The one dodging attacks, selecting options and breaking in half on a game over. A human soul. There is some stuff muddying the water about how exactly this works in the universe. You are called an angel, an anomaly. The soul is said to belong to the first human child who died, but they also address you directly in one ending. Not to mention there are 6 others. But for the purposes of this video, none of that matters much. Because the core of it is the fact that a soul is power. In the universe, it is recognized that a single human is more powerful than all of the monsters in the underworld combined, if they put their mind into it, and you, as the human being playing the game, have control over time in the form of saving and loading it. It is dubbed determination. No matter how many times you fail, you can go back and try again, until you reach the desired outcome. No matter what the game throws at you, none of it will ever hurt you. You exist on a completely different plane of reality than that silly little world does. So then the question becomes, what is it that you desire? What will you do with that power? You can approach the game like a typical old school RPG and just grind your way through it. You encounter a monster, attack it, gain EXP, become stronger, rinse and repeat. The thing is, that's kinda boring in the grand scheme of things. No matter how many people you stab, it's always the same motion. It's never gonna shake things up in any way. Well, with two exceptions in the form of two boss fights that actually put up a fight against you, but that's two specs of actual challenge in 8 hours of monotonous killing for the purpose of seeing a number go big. And when you're done with it and open the game again, you're welcomed by darkness and wind howling through the emptiness. Congratulations, you destroyed everything just like you wanted, the game is gone. Unless, of course, you mess with the game files and set it back. But then, what are you gonna do? Go on that killing spree again, to the same result? What enjoyment is there in using your power that way? Instead, why not take comfort in your invincibility? Take as many tries as you need to reach out to these trying to harm you and get to know them. Take your time to understand them, help them, get them over to your side. None of them can really harm you, and isn't talking and learning more interesting than repeating the same stabbing motion again and again? Isn't it more of a challenge to actually adapt and try to do the right thing? A decade ago, when the game was fresh off the presses, I distinctly remember some folks criticizing it for being naive and promoting pacifism even when someone is trying to kill you. And while that may sound reasonable when looking from the outside, in the full context of the game and the power disparity between you and the monochromatic funny fellas inside of it, that's like saying that a chihuahua barking at you justifies kicking it like a football. It is, ultimately, just a game that gives you infinite possibilities to do what you want. So why would you want to do something any other game can provide, instead of something unique to this title specifically? There are, of course, titles that focus on things other than violence, like puzzle games, city builders or dating sims. But no game other than Undertale has characters from Undertale. Not even Deltarune does, but we'll get there. You playing it is the only way you'll ever get to meet them, talk with them, understand them on some level. Did you kill a nice goat lady that prevented you from leaving the tutorial area, literally holding your hand through the puzzles, because it felt that no matter what you did, she would not relent? Well, you can learn that there is indeed a way to get through to her and then reload a save to try again. Sure, some fuck-ass flower will call you out on it, but even his misanthropic little butt can be reached out to, revealing a ghost of a child that is hurt, frightened and bored. You have no enemies. One can call Undertale childish because of that, but not in the typical negative meaning of the word in my opinion. The game is a toy and you are, indeed, a child playing with it. Have fun. The real world may be much more complex and cruel than this imagined reality, but maybe you'll find that it too is more fun if you try to reach out to others and not cut them off. Hopefully in a less literal way. But that is up to you and your own sense of determination. A toy can help you, but it will not do it for you, if that makes sense. If we follow the logic of Undertale being childish in that sense, a tale of how life will be richer if you connect with others and that you can achieve anything if you try with enough determination in your heart, for good or ill, then Deltarune is adolescent. It's a very similar game on its surface, an RPG with bullet hell elements, but now with a party of 3. But it is very different from its predecessor after you get to know it better, and that shows in how it tackles the themes also present in Undertale. Sure, you may have been told that you can do anything as a child, but how the hell is determination going to help you when your parents are divorced, the older brother that was your closest friend left for college, you suffer from severe body dysmorphia due to being the only human in town, and the guilt of something horrible you did in the past haunts you? Well, not you, but rather the human you are controlling this time around. This crispy little fella, non-binary. Whereas Frisk was a child and there was very little disconnection between what you did and their reaction, no matter whether you told them to be a good egg or gave them a knife to go apeshit, Kris is a teenager with their own thoughts, past and ideas. And they are very, very, very unhappy about the fact that you are puppeteering their body. Moreover, the game reminds you again and again that unlike in Undertale, your choices don't really matter here. The character you create at the start gets unceremoniously discarded in favor of Kris. The enemies run away if you attack them. You get interrupted when given the choice to answer constantly. The entire plot is set to follow in the steps of some religious prophecy written who knows how long ago. So if Kris possessing the soul, or the soul possessing Kris for that matter, is not a visual indication of having the same determination, the power to achieve anything, then what does the funny little heart indicate in this iteration of the story? While it looks identical to the soul in Undertale, I think it signifies something completely different than it did there. In general, Deltarune does that a lot due to reusing a lot of characters from the previous game, but in a completely different context. If you played both games in release order, meeting these characters sets up an expectation that they will be identical to how they were in Undertale, only for that expectation to not be fully met. Pretty reminiscent of how, as you grow up, you discover more about people you thought you knew perfectly, for good or ill. As an example, in Undertale, Toriel is this extremely caring, motherly figure that takes in Frisk to protect them to a comedically smothering degree at points. But you also don't see much of her past the introductory parts because the game has to account for her dying when she refuses to let you out of the safety of her home. In Deltarune, Toriel is quite literally Kris's adoptive mom, with everything that entails. Not just warmth and caring, but also dragging them to church on Sunday, getting irritated with them, and getting drunk with some grocery store guy to let loose. Your mom can be the most loving person in the world, but nothing quite sobers you up to the fact she's just as much of a flawed person as you, like holding her hair because she drank too much at your aunt's wedding. The change from Undertale to Deltarune is not just a jump between different worlds with different rules, but it is, in a way, a change in understanding brought about by growing up. They are still fundamentally the same people, but your way of perceiving them is different. And this applies to all returning characters, including the audience. In Chapter 3 of Deltarune, we are given some insight into the rules of that world. From the very beginning, we knew that the worlds explored are separated into the light world that Kris and Susie come from, a pretty mundane reality of a small town inhabited by monsters, and the dark worlds of fantasy, heroic battles, and fluffy toothpaste boys. And this is explained by Ralsei as follows. In light, you can see the truth, but in the darkness your eyes see things that are not there, like the monster from a movie poster coming to life. And when a dark fountain is opened, a darkness deeper than dark comes out. Not the lack of light, but the opposite of it. And in that anti-light, inanimate objects come to life. The will of whoever opened the fountain turns a library computer into a funny girl dot, and a jack of spades into a bouncy little boy. That explanation does seem to not be complete, considering that the Darkeners seem to have pretty complex lives with events that logically took more time to transpire than the 3 in-universe days that passed in the 4 chapters of the game that we got so far. But I think the core of it is true. Light is truth, and darkness is illusion. But rather than a binary, it is more of a spectrum. We hear mentions of heaven, most notably from Spamton screaming at it, and Ralsei's version of the prophecy. The Dark World characters need a real-life object to be created, and there is a layer of darkness even deeper than the Dark World, one that the Roaring Knight summons the Titan from as the final boss fight in Chapter 4. So it looks kind of like this. It should be vertical because heaven implies the skies and the dark worlds are created by stabbing into the ground, but the video is horizontal, so tilt your head for full accuracy if you wanna. And even then I have some doubts, mostly because of how we're consistently shown that opening a fountain first creates a geyser of pure blinding light before it inverts into darkness, even when done in the Dark World. Metaphysically speaking, it may not be 2 opposite ends of a very long stick, but more of a mirror reflection kind of thing. But anyway. The soul has the ability to close the fountains by emitting a wave of bright light, plugging up the hole in reality from which the darkness pours out. This ability to shine is driven home in Chapter 4, where it becomes the key to defeating Jackenstein as a jockey prelude to the fight against the Titan, the personification of fear itself, the bump in the dark. The soul is that light. It is the concept of truth itself. Because, of course, you are the realest part of this experience. An angel looking down from heaven onto this fictional world, even if some versions of it are more fictional than others. And this may seem like a trivial difference when compared to Undertale. Power or truth, what difference does it really make? In both cases we have a nebulous concept that can be used for good or ill, and places you quite literally above the world of the game. But there is a single significant factor that makes Deltarune unique. It pushes back, and the avatar of that is one W.D. Gaster. For those unaware, Gaster is a hidden character in Undertale, the previous royal scientist that got by his own creation and disappeared. To be specific, he got lost in the game code and you need to fuck around with it to find all pieces of him scattered throughout the game, in the form of monochromatic followers mentioning him and some journal entries. One of them in particular ties directly to Deltarune, speaking of darkness darker than dark, negative photon readings, anti-light. And for the longest time people were wondering what his deal is. What is this spooky guy's goal? Why does entering his name crash the game? And why is he associated with the number 666, like the flipping devil? And I think it starts to make more sense now after we got Deltarune, and we know that the idea for this game actually came to Toby Fox before Undertale in a fever dream. That's right, one of the most critically and commercially acclaimed indie games in history was a test run. Gaster's fingerprints are all over Deltarune, most notably in the very beginning, where a voice addresses you directly and calls your choices very interesting in all caps. Entering that name still crashes the game as well. But I also think that the fandom is barking up the wrong tree in thinking that he is going to be the final antagonist, or that he is directly involved in the core story of the game at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna say he is completely irrelevant. These bits and pieces are there for a reason, and you are rewarded for digging deeper. But the hand of Mr. Ding Dong Gastro is not ever gonna be shown directly, only alluded to. Just like you are a key component of the experience, but at no point will Kris turn to the screen and point at you saying, "That's him, officer, that's the guy that forced me to do all those weird things. His name is Walter Hartwell White and he lives at 308 Negra Arroyo Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87104. Because if you are an angel and Gaster is associated with the number of the devil, those dastardly 3 sixes, what does that tell us about him? That he is your opposite. And maybe someone once like you, considering the most commonly known myth associated with the devil is that of a fallen angel. If you are the realest thing in Deltarune, an undeniably real being looking at that world from the top down, then he is the most illusory, looking from the bottom up. Hidden in the depths of darkness where all the ideas that will never see the light of day dwell, someone who will never be able to see the game in the same light as you do. I am, indeed, saying that Gaster is the collective identity of everyone who works on Deltarune, mostly Toby Fox, but also other contributors as well. The game can only exist between them and you, in a balance of darkness and light, the fiction they created and the reality of you experiencing it. And this time, it is an equivalent push from both sides, not just a playground left for you to do whatever you want, but an active conversation. Even the format of releasing the story in chapters, rather than all in one go, plays into this, giving us crumbs to speculate and want to look deeper into the dark and find what's there, which in itself tells the developers what parts of the grand design are properly illuminated and where they maybe need to direct more of our attention to. Though, of course, real life is a bitch and kinda complicated that whole thing a bit. Well, Tidu, that's all fine and dandy, but how does that meta view of the thing relate to the story of the game? Well, my dear figurine of Jill Stingray from the hit visual novel VA11 Hall A that I'm using as my conversation partner who will never ask me questions I don't expect, I think this understanding of the audience, light and truth as one and the same is the key to understanding a few key elements of this tale. Let's try and take them on one by one. Let's start with Kris Dreamer, the incredibly reluctant player character of our little tale. Why are they like that? Over the course of the 4 chapters it became undeniably obvious that they are their own person, and they have some fucking problems, both related to being controlled by your hands and outside of that. Through some dialogues with people that have known Kris for a long time, most notably Noelle, we can piece together an image of how they really are, or at least were back in their childhood. A quiet, mumbly kid who never raised their voice. But also a prankster with a rebellious streak. It definitely takes being a little rascal on the regular for 3 different people to immediately assume you're gonna sing swears if you go caroling. And of course they're the only human in a town of monsters. And that has caused some, let's say, body issues, like asking when their horns are gonna grow out and getting a set of plastic ones instead. I'm sure someone less cis than me made a video exploring that in a greater depth than I could ever attempt at. But you know, none of these things are really what defines Kris as we meet them in the game, because frankly, these are all quirks. Just the little parts of you when you're surrounded by loving friends and family. But they're not. One fateful day in the past, December holiday, the elder daughter in a family that was joined at the hip with the Dreamers, and very likely the girlfriend of Azriel, Kris's brother, just disappeared for some reason. The holiday stopped coming over. Asgore, Kris's dad and chief of police at the time, got dishonorably discharged because of the case, which in turn led to his and Toriel's divorce. Plus some clear indication of obsession with solving it, a whole Pepe Silvia corkboard in the basement of his flower shop in the modern day. But that obsession and the divorce are a bit of a chicken and egg scenario right now. And Asriel left for college. Though, considering that most of the memories of him and Kris spending time together seem to be primarily about their younger days, when everyone was around, there is some ground to think that maybe the relationship got colder following Des's disappearance. And all of it seems to be Kris's fault. Or at least they think it's their fault. Listen, they know something about the bunker that all of this story seems to lead to, and a code to it is found inside Des's guitar. I will be shocked if there isn't a crushing sense of guilt buried somewhere in there. At the very beginning of the game, you hear a voice, let's assume it's Gaster, giving you a bunch of choices on character creation, only to be cut off by a different voice, no longer written in all caps, saying that your choice will be discarded. No one in this world has any choice, and you are going to be Kris now. And I firmly believe that the second voice is Kris, just fucking slapping away the hand of the game creator and going, listen you little shit, I didn't choose to be human either, nor did I choose my life going to shit, you're going with me now cause I need you for reasons. Because while you get told that your choices have no meaning at the start, that's clearly bullshit. Sure, the big things are out of your control, mostly because the other characters like Susie have their own agency and you cannot override it. But even in Chapter 1, when you're bombarded with instances of the game telling you there is no choice, there is. It's your choice whether to be nice to the Dark Nurse or scare them away, leading to a different ending to the fight with the king. Nothing is forcing you to go out of your way to find Jevil as the super boss, or to go back to the top chef and give him his cake back. Sure, these are small things, but they add up, the clearest indication of which is seeing how the castle town develops. And your presence is slowly but surely showing Kris that the cage they're in is of their own making, and they fucking hate that. I also think it's worth noting that Kris ripping the soul out and lodging it somewhere always precedes deception, either of you as the audience or the other characters. Chapter 1, we get a cliffhanger where they look like a crazed killer. Granted, I think that in this instance they might have just been sick of you after the first full day together and wanted some cake to distress. Chapter 2, they slash the car tires to set up the house for the new fountain and a visit from both the knight and the cops. And in Chapter 4, they do it to hide the guitar from Susie and also to pretend that their mom is not getting boned by the convenience store clerk really loudly. It's not just denying you as a player the satisfaction of doing whatever you want like in Undertale. It's hiding from the truth. That truth power is also letting you know what Susie is doing in another room and read thoughts, so that tracks as well with that reading. Granted, one big rock thrown into the cogs of this interpretation is that the save points are specks of light, just like they were in Undertale, but rather than telling you that they fill you with determination, you get prompts telling you that you are filled with a power of something. So that kinda spits in the face of me saying that the soul is power in Undertale, but it's truth in Deltarune. But let's go with the fact that by possessing a soul, Frisk had power and needed determination to use it, and Kris has the truth locked up inside them, but they need power to bring it about. After all, having no choice is being powerless. Though I guess we can also read the symbol of the heart more literally. If the deep darkness of Titans is fear itself, then light and the soul are bravery. Have heart and all that. But I feel like that's a bit of a too positive of a concept for the kind of shit you can make Kris pull in this game. So let's talk about the scenes where the game takes a bit of a weird route. Whereas in Chapter 1 the main events of the story are pretty unchanging, Chapter 2 gives you a point of pretty clear divergence. There are two more Lighteners lost in this dark world, Berdly and Noel. Berdly is the kind of guy that is deeply relatable to most of the game's audience, and that's why we all want to kill him. A nerd obsessed with being perceived as smart, falsely correlating being a gamer with said intelligence, and someone who just desperately needs to be good at something to feel like he has a spot he belongs in. Which makes him extremely easy to manipulate by Queen, that chapter's main antagonist. But Noelle is much more important for our purposes here. She's December's younger sister and someone who has known Kris since they were both children, though they have notably strayed away from each other, following whatever the hell happened with Des. Noelle is a timid little fella, feminine, who wouldn't hurt a fly and get scared by mice. And yet we're told again and again that she is strong. And this is twofold. She has a strong will, a sense of determination, one could say, not having stopped her search for her sister in any way she can, and that willpower is a prerequisite to open a dark fountain. And she is also strong in the video game sense, as she can cast offensive spells that don't just make the enemies run away in fear, but leave them frozen in place. And during a section of the game where Kris and Noelle are left all alone, rather than just go in a straight line to meet again with Susie and Rasa, you can just, you know, go back a bit and grind out her power level. Freeze everything in your path. Buy a ring of thorns that hurts her, but increases her power even more. Make her even stronger. Proceed to put her in situations where she needs to use those powers to defend herself, like implicitly threatening to push her into an electric fence if she doesn't turn it into ice. And all of it culminating in freezing poor Birdley to death when he tries to rescue her, being fully selfless for the first time. Well, it's not actually to death. Chapter 4 reveals he's in a coma in a hospital. And nobody but you seems to visit. Really wonder why he was so desperate to seem useful to someone, huh? From the player point of view, this seems like a random prolonged act of cruelty inflicted on Noelle and Kris. And it is, but it does have a point. We may not have been aware of it when Chapter 2 first came out, but Kris is deeply aware of where this entire story is heading and plays an active part in it. And if we go with this video's hypothesis that the soul is a conduit of pure truth, then I think it follows that we cannot make Kris do something they would not at least consider in some way, even if they would absolutely deny it. We are dragging this poor child kicking and screaming into the light when they would rather just collapse into a dark corner of a room. Now, this has side effects obvious in the game world. Noelle mentions how Kris sounds more like a speaker saying something than their real voice. We are pushing the truth out of their mouth, but there is no emotion to it most of the time. After all, emotions are more of something that lurks in darkness, giving things meaning that is not materially a part of them. So, for example, when in Chapter 4 we're in the church and gathering clues, Kris is both considering just giving the juice to Alphys to get the information they want, and also that it would be really fucking fine to just drink it in front of her and throw the cup on the ground. We dictate which of these mutually exclusive truths come out. So, in the weird route, we forcefully push out that one thing that must be at the back of their mind. That if someone else becomes strong enough to see this shit through, they won't need to. That they can push someone else under the trolley speeding down the tracks rather than jump onto them. Someone who also has a connection to death, perhaps, or maybe simply someone who they know they can influence. The only person still left from their old life that they still feel some connection to. And in Chapter 4, when Noelle tries to discuss the weird fucked up dream she had with Kris, they panic and try to stop her from talking. They don't want to hurt her any more than they did. But it wasn't a dream. It did snow. We, the audience, the angel, are present and can hear her thoughts. Truth can be as harsh as the fiercest blizzard after all. Though, fuck me if I get how the forced marriage symbolism with the unremovable ring and the need to pick an option to say that the two of you are something else comes into play. For now, I'm gonna go with this sort of forced relationship, especially as Noelle is a young girl, being a signifier of exerting your control over somebody despite their wishes otherwise. But I'm not married to that reading. Also, it's worth mentioning that the whole darkness is emotions thing comes into play in a much less cruel way, regardless of what you do in Chapter 4. Where for Kris to play the piano, we need to give up control of them for a bit and let the muscle memory do its job. The most we can give are stiff commands, which is fine when working with a rhythm game version of playing a guitar, but it absolutely falls apart when we are faced with an actual instrument with 16 different inputs. You can't facts and logic your way into something that relies on feeling. Also, as we discussed, the Titan is the emotion of fear, so there's a straight correlation if you need one. Speaking of darkness, many people have already pointed out that all the dark words so far are based on some version of escapism. Board games, the internet, TV time with family, and religion are all, in some sense, a way to distance yourself from your real life. You know, the one in the light world. And in most instances, we've seen it's actually a healthy thing, not just because we get reminders of how these things brought happiness and fun, but the characters can also explore their feelings in a more full, meaningful way than they would in their reality. Susie can stop feeling like she needs to constantly be on edge thanks to Lancer being a fun little fella, masculine, that is too pure to even consider lying when he says she's really cool. Noelle can reminisce about her childhood and how Des promised to take her to a city full of lights, as well as live out her fantasy of a date night with Susie. Not to mention standing up to an authority figure standing in for her mom. And Kris gets to bring the trauma of their parents fighting and abandonment issues to the forefront. Listen, I said in most instances, okay? This puts the shadow crystals, the collectible items you get for defeating secret bosses, in an interesting light. First and foremost, it's a shadow crystal. It's not a piece of darkness, but something that exists thanks to light. Not a truth, but something following it that gave these enemies some ideas. A falsehood derived from a fact, if that makes sense. All of them exemplify some fake form of freedom. Jevil is a mad jester that thinks he can do anything, seeing himself as the only really free person despite sitting in a cell. In a way, seeing freedom like one would with a game, a freedom from consequences and the ability to indulge in whatever. In a way, I wonder if he kinda mirrors the way that Susie initially viewed the Dark World, as a place you can just do whatever in. And there are some implications that Des, Azriel and Kris ventured to the Dark Worlds before, like some choice lines from Ramp in Chapter 3. Did they view these fictional worlds in a similar way until it bit them in the ass? The shadow here is as follows. This is a fictional world, true, so nothing in it will affect you. False. Spamton is a, well, spam bot living in a trash can. He used to be a big shot salesman and lures Kris to help him out in gaining a new body to get more power. He is obviously shady, but there is merit in thinking that he can punch you to something of value. Maybe you can even scam a scammer. Too bad that the reveal is that even with a new Neo body, he is a puppet on strings, and severing them does not grant him freedom, but just makes him drop on the floor, no longer being able to move. And that revelation hits Kris hard enough for them to scream no when asked if they're okay. Clear parallels to the whole soul situation, but also potentially their entire thing that made them summon the soul in the first place. So here the shadow is. I am a puppet because I am weak. True, so I will become free if I gain power. False. Jumping by a chapter, Gaster is unique because he represents freedom as well, but he doesn't care for the silly little piece of dark glass left on his desk. He is someone who deeply believes that while there is merit to the prophecy, the real answers can be found in the dark spaces between its lines. But he also does not wish to use that for his own needs. He would rather teach the young generation so they can grasp freedom for themselves. So he just gives us a piece of truth without any twist. The prophecy does not cover the whole truth. A lot of people notice that Susie seems to be outside of its purview almost completely, being symbolized by the antagonistic dragon, and seemingly breaking the flow of fate with ease. Personally, I would go a step further and say that none of the fan gang is actually the heroes from the prophecy at all. But I don't have solid evidence to prove that claim other than gut feeling. So I'll spare you from listening to me try and piece together why that is. Also, it would be really fucking funny if Decage, human soul and human parts was Sans. Because, you know, he's a skeleton, human parts. Just put the soul in his ribcage in some dramatic moment and we're golden. Finally, there is the fight with the Roaring Knight in Chapter 3, the overarching antagonist of the story, the one responsible for opening all these dark fountains, either directly or via proxies like Kris. The fight is hard as tits, and we get the shard when Susie clashes with their blade, chipping away a part of it. And all of the knight is the same black with white outline, so I don't think it's just their weapon that is the same material as the shadow crystals, it's all of them. And in the spirit of other Deltarune videos, for this final bit I want to indulge in some theory crafting. It seems fun and I'm not made of stone, I'm not Lancer. Due to the silhouette of the knight having antlers and wielding a baseball bat, it has been speculated that it is Des Holiday in some form, some twisted revenant of her. And I disagree. First of all, I don't buy that Des is lost in the depths, in the same place as where the Titans come from and where Gaster dwells. If you look through the game files, with each chapter there are some unused lines of dialogue added. Lines of someone surrounded by complete nothingness, losing track of time, remembering a nightmare of a door closing behind them and leaving them there. They also thank you for the company, the first thing they were able to experience in forever. That is Des. I don't think there's much reason to dispute that. But let's bring up my shitty ass chart again. When Rouse explains light and darkness, these are not the only two options he mentions. Almost in passing, he also says that if there is no light, you can see nothing. An emptiness. Neither light of truth, nor the darkness of fantasy. That's where I think Des currently is, in this limbo of nothing. Also, she does seem to have her faculties about her in these lost dialogues, which does not really track with the knight opening their chest to roar at you menacingly. So, what is it exactly? Well, I think there is more than one knight. Not physically, but on a, conceptual level. I think it would be extremely funny if there are exactly 7 of them to mirror the 7 souls in Undertale, so I'm gonna try and stretch here to fill that number, for funsies. The fact that there is a conspiracy afoot is broadly accepted in the theories I've seen, and there is a bunch of evidence of several actors at play, most obviously the fact that the bunker has 3 possible codes used to enter it. I think the members of this conspiracy are collectively under the symbolism of knighthood because they all swore an oath. Or at least that's the most obvious theme I can think of at the moment. So let's count them off, in order. First, the knight you fight. It's the shadow of the knight, possibly a shadow of death. Made of the same stuff as the shadow crystals and warping its form several times in the fight and after it. It is the falsehood derived from a truth. Someone is opening these dark fountains to some end. True. It's a single person. No. Now, I don't know how it works on a metaphysical level. It's probably not a Darkener because it can open a fountain in a dark world at the end of the chapter 4. It may as well just be a guise worn by the actual members of the conspiracy interchangeably. A shadow mantle, if you will. But that's just a loose idea. I don't have the brainpower to figure out what's the deal with that piece of lore. Let's just leave it be for now. But I strongly believe that the aura farming knight that actually does nothing is, at most, a tool. A shadow on the wall for the fun gang to chase, when the rest does the actual work. Second, Kris Dreamer. They open at least one fountain, looks like a stereotypical knight in the dark world with an armor, sword and shield. They clearly know about the bunker and get knighted if you win the boss fight in chapter 3. Straightforward. They're a squire in a sense. Third, Carol Holiday. Again, quite straightforward. She seems aware of the soul and goes back home from her very important job as a mayor when she hears that Susie got the guitar with the bunker code in it. If anything, she probably is the brains behind the whole thing, because she thinks it will get Des back in some way. What the mechanics of that are, I'm not sure. But it definitely doesn't seem to be as straightforward as end of the world, ? Profit, considering the human soul is needed to close the fountains but not open them, as Susie can do the latter despite being a monster. Fourth, Asgore Dreamer. Former police chief, would have a code to the bunker. Obsessed with solving the case of Des's disappearance. We can find him in the Holiday Manor, looking at a conspiracy corkboard, saying that it will all be solved soon and that a black shard is beautiful. Probably too caught up in the sauce of fixing his life to realize the same conspiracy is putting his child in mortal danger. Fifth, Azriel Dreamer. Yes, Kris's brother. This is the biggest Hail Mary here, but I don't think he's in college. I think he's working on getting his girlfriend back from the limbo. My evidence is as follows. In chapter 4, Asgore fumbles by trying to play on his ex-wife's heartstrings by catching her in front of a church with a bouquet of flowers. When Toriel excuses herself from the scene, Asgore mumbles that Azriel will be able to see us back to normal. This is the same chapter where he says that solving the corkboard case will put things back to normal as well. I do not believe that man has enough brain cells to maintain 2 separate thought tracks at the same time. That is all. Sixth, Alvin Boom, the pastor. Absolutely no evidence other than the fact that the bunker has a Deltarune code, which is tied to the religion of the Light World. Also, someone had to open those fountains in the church, and there was no choir practice because of the rain. Someone who remembered Gerson so clearly and fondly as to make him live again as a Darkener, rather than a facade of him like when Susie stabs the earth herself. Seventh, whatever the hell this cat thing is. It's called a friend in game files, it is visible smiling in the shadows at several points in the Dark World. John Shadowmantle summons it as minions in the boss fight. The goddamn combination of cat imagery with yellow and pink is everywhere if you look. Might be keeping the tabs on Kris, might be called Mike, might be the same exact being as number 1 on this list. I'm stretching because I don't actually know who number 7 would be realistically. Not Gaster. Let's try and gather up all of these loose threads and make a single rope out of them to tie all of this together. Deltarune differs from Undertale not just in details, but in the core conceit of the world, that it only exists thanks to the balance of light and dark, truth and illusion. These two sides can influence each other. A dark world can make a lightener face their trauma and issues thanks to the distance that the fiction puts between them and the root cause of these problems. And the companionship of true friends from the light world can make a darkener experience things they didn't even conceive of before. For better or worse, the soul, aka you, is a piece of absolute truth guiding the party, and we will ultimately either push Kris to face up to why they are a part of the Knight's Order, or give in to the urges to run away by forcing Noelle into becoming a powerful tool. Both of these paths are true to their thoughts, but only one of them can exist at a time. On the flip side, we have Gaster being a stand-in for the game developers, the one placing roadblocks in our path to help create the most illusory, intangible element of this world: feelings. You can't really code something to be happy or sad, which is why David Cage games tend to fall flat on their face. But you can put in elements that will guide the audience to feel a certain way. For example, a few red pixels can invoke the idea of a heart and what it symbolizes for the audience. And finally, we have the desire for freedom, either for yourself or another. The Knights most likely want to free Des from wherever she's trapped. Kris wants to be free from their guilt and whatever strings force them to play out their part in the conspiracy. Jevil and Spamton desire freedom from being Darkeners, illusions that have no real control over who they are. The Lighteners seek freedom in the dark, and the Darkeners seek freedom within light. And I think there is one truly free character in this entire story, and it's Des Holiday. There is quite literally nothing stopping her. It's just her and her thoughts. She can do anything, trapped in her prison. No strings attaching her to anyone or anything else. In the dark space between the lines of the prophecy, a shadow chased by everyone. Maybe, just maybe, absolute freedom is not what it's cut out to be. And that's all the ideas I've had after thinking about what we got on Deltarune so far. Not a very climactic ending, but hey, we're in the middle of the story being discussed, so it's only fair that we leave the things hanging for now. Chapter 5 is coming out next year, so I guess we'll see if I got at least one thing right, or if this video will become the video essay equivalent of Spamton. I hope I won't need to move out into a garbage can. I'm not cool enough to be like Diogenes. Not a very spooky video considering it's October, but hey, who says I'm timely with anything? Anyhow, thank you very much for watching to the end, especially as I feel this is the messiest video of mine yet. Videos like this are sponsored by my Patreon supporters, now visible on the screen. Shoutouts go to the newest member of the crew, Versum. I've still got one more in me before the year ends, but in January we get Pathologic 3 and Protoman Act 3, so I'll be in Brainworm Heaven. Until then, see ya.